There's been a lot of talk going on around as of late of people saying I was born this way. It's just the way I am, just who I am. I can't control what happens to me or how I think. I don't have an explanation. It's just who I am, and people need to accept that. Accept that I'm never changing who I am. Now, that is not entirely true. However, it is true to an extent. There are certain traits about people that make up who they are. To say that we're all wired the exact same way and it's only our life choices that define who we are, that's not entirely true. We have certain traits about us that make us unique that bring nothing on at all. If we were all the same, then we'd all desire the same jobs. We'd all act the same way, have the same sense of humor. But everyone has a different sense of humor. Everyone has different ambitions. Everyone looks different because we are different. And certain traits are the same way. With this in mind, the question must be asked, why are people so afraid of public speaking, while people like me have no problem with it at all? It's a question that is tasked me before I even took this capstone, before I even had to write the essay. I was really wondering, okay, what makes me so different? Because according to sources, 70% of Americans are afraid of public speaking. 70%. And even more than that even more than 70% of college students are afraid of public speaking. Even more than death. Let that sink in for a minute. College students and most people in America would rather die than give a speech. That might be a little overly dramatic, that perhaps when they were filling out this survey they didn't think about death, but still, that was on their minds. Just the thought of giving a speech filled them with dread. And it's almost comical. That's how people think when someone like me has no problem with it whatsoever. That it's no big deal. So why? Well, we're going to explore that in this 15-minute presentation. We're going to explore what the fear actually is, the fear of public speaking. We're going to examine what it is. I'm going to discuss some people I interviewed, their stories. A couple have the fear of public speaking, some have not. Some who are like me and are just not afraid. We're going to examine why they are that way. And to close out, we're going to discuss some possible solutions for people to get over this fear. But the main point of all this, and through my research, I've discovered that there are ways to overcome the fear. But the thing is, not everyone will be willing to, because whatever the reason they have for being afraid, they just aren't willing to work at it. And they're just afraid. And there's no answer to it. There's no grand revelation behind it. It's just who they are. Just how it is who I am. I made no decision to be a public speaker, to be a preacher, and a wrestling coach. Those are my two jobs. And both involve speaking to an audience. Obviously, one is much more important, preaching and preaching God's word and helping the congregation, obviously. But with being a wrestling coach, I still have to stand up in front of my the kids I coach and tell them the different moves, give them inspirational quotes and stories. And so I didn't necessarily make the choice to do that. It's just something I've always enjoyed. Ever since I was born, I wanted to be a public speaker. Obviously, when I was born, that wasn't the first words out of my mouth. But when I was in the 2s and 3s class, I always was the one to volunteer to say a prayer. Yeah, I wanted to say a prayer. I had no problem with it, even at the age of 2. I had no problem with speaking. I was baptized when I was 14 or 15. Honestly, that's something I really should have memorized by now, but I don't. So that's kind of bad. Makes me look bad. But as soon as I was baptized, immediately I wanted to be active in the church. I wanted to get up in the congregation and say prayers, read scriptures, and even once I turned 18, I gave my first sermon. I started my preaching when I was 18 years old. And of course, I was passionate about the Bible. I've always been passionate about the Bible, and that's the big reason why I started, but also because I was not afraid, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I enjoyed preaching. I enjoyed writing speeches. I enjoyed giving speeches. And it's went from there. I'm 22 years old now, and I'm still preaching. And there's no answer to it. There's not. I don't have a story to give you. I've just always had the confidence and the desire to. I don't know what else I can say about that. Well, let's dive deeper into what the fear of public speaking actually is. And for starters, it's actually called glossophobia, the scientific term. But I'm not going to call it glossophobia. I don't know. Fear of public speaking, speech anxiety. That's what I'm calling it. Okay. Now, according to Graham Bodie's article, Erasing Heart, Rattling Knees, and Ruminative Thoughts, Defining, Explaining, and Treating Public Speaking Anxiety, in the most general sense, PSA, or public speaking anxiety, can be classified as a type of social anxiety, the hallmark of which is the threat of unsatisfactory evaluations from audiences. So, that is the primary reason people are afraid to give a speech. Fear of judgment from others. That's the big thing. And so that's not surprising. When I read that, that's what I assumed. I couldn't just write my assumptions on the paper. I mean, that wouldn't make for a good essay. But that's what I assumed. People are so wrapped up in what other people think of them. That's just eating away at them. Oh, what are they going to think of me? Am I going to mess up? Are they going to never let me live it down? Well, the truth of the matter is that, yes, we want to leave a statement and leave something for the audience to remember. But if you mess up on a speech or say something wrong or whatever happens, the audience isn't going to remember for a long time. They'll almost forget about it almost immediately. It's not going to stick with them. Yeah, speeches can leave impacts on people. I mean, famous speeches throughout history are still with us. I Have a Dream, the I Have a Dream speech. It's one of the greatest speeches of all time, and it sticks with people. But a mistake in a speech, like a stutter, I've stuttered a little bit in this little presentation. I don't think anyone's going to dwell on that, whoever sees this. But it's just the fact. Alright. Okay, and Bodie continues to claim, research consistently finds PSA is validly conceptualized as a trait. Some individuals generally feel anxious about public speaking, whereas others do not. Okay. Now, there's not one general trait, like you just said, because I've been saying that some people just aren't afraid, it's a gene. It's not a gene, okay? I mean, that there is no other fear than that just pops up out of nowhere. That people get arachnophobia only because they have traumatic experience with spiders. That's not true. Some people just find spiders creepy without having one lunge at them or seeing a horror movie involving spiders. Some people just find them creepy. Like kids being scared of the dark. Nothing happens to kids. I was scared of the dark as a kid, and I can tell you for a fact, nothing brought on that fear. I was just afraid. It just sort of happened. I can't explain it. And the sources I've looked at, they can't really explain it either. It's because the human mind and how our mind works, it's a really confusing thing. Let's see now. What I find ironic, or more tragic, honestly, is that there are so many people out there guaranteed who would make fantastic public speakers. People with such knowledge and confident speaking in group settings, good voices, people skills, and again, knowledge and experience. They could be great public speakers and have such a great impact on society if they weren't so afraid. And honestly, it's just a shame. It's a shame that their fear is holding them back. And the thing is, again, they shouldn't be so afraid. Because according to Nadine Vivia, unfortunately for college students, public speaking is also a class that is frequently required or recommended by their universities. In 2006, more than half of the basic communication courses surveyed had a public speaking focus, rather than a hybrid, interpersonal, or small group focus. So, there's one reason to get over their fear. It's not optional. At some point in your life, you're going to have to give a speech. And in that moment, you don't want to just go through the motions or panic or give a bad speech. You should be ready and be willing to give the speech and make it good. Imagine doing the speech, it going well, and discovering there was nothing bad about it in the first place. It could change everything, which brings me to my friend Nate. And I'm running out of time, so I will summarize his story. It's on my essay for his exact word for word, but essentially he was really scared of public speaking due to a past event where he did squats right before one of his speeches the day before. It was an intense leg workout, and once he got up there, he was shaking so much his legs started to look like Elvis. And that event really caused him to stray away from public speaking. That's one of those times where he has a reason. Something happened in his life that really scared him. But he got over it. He saw that he was in a small congregation, and he really had to get over his fear to be a helping member, to speak and lead prayers, sing, etc. He was once so afraid of public speaking, and you know what he does now? He is a preacher. He is a preacher and a high school teacher. 2 jobs that involve giving speeches. And he's one of the best I've ever seen. The point of this story is you can overcome it. But what Nate did, there wasn't a specific, therapy session that turned him right. He just said to himself, I have to get over it. And he made effort. And once he started public speaking and started on that path, he was unstoppable. He realized there was really nothing to be afraid of at all. The thing that was holding him back was himself. And not just with public speaking anxiety, not just that specific fear, every fear. The main thing that holds people back from reaching their potential is themselves. And that is a fact. It is a fact. It is a fact with me. I got lost a few times while hiking or driving in the mountains, and it really scared me about going to different places because I didn't want to get lost again. But that held me back so much from going on adventures and experiencing fun things. Why? Just why would I do that to myself? I was my own worst enemy, and people are the same way. Everyone, that's what all ties us together. We all have problems and fears. That's what unites us as a people. We are all similar in that way. We all have problems and fears that hold us back. The thing that separates us is how we act on those fears and problems. That's what separates us. There are those who let their fears hold them back, and there are those who get over it and move on. And that's the main thing we can do is to move on. What the sources say, again, I wasn't sure for this presentation if I had to quote things or read things word for word. All of that, all stats and everything that's in my essay, and I apologize if I was supposed to do this, but all the stats and all the quotes, I have plenty of quotes in there describing solutions to all this, but the main one was to surround yourself with good people, friends and family, and practice. And that goes back to it's all in here, because all the solutions, it's not really something someone can specifically help you with. It starts with you. You need to make effort to try and get over your fear. Practice public speaking, rehearsing, taking baby steps. Start with a smaller crowd, then a bigger crowd, then a bigger crowd, and do it with a friendly audience. And realize that no one is specifically out to get you and want you to fail and will make fun of you if you do fail. That's the main point from the sources I gathered. It's primarily a mental issue. And the sad truth, my essay does not have really a happy ending. The sad truth is not everyone will be willing to try. Not everyone will be willing to make that effort. My friend Nate was, but my cousin Lauren wasn't. And she proved to me she could. She was really shy. She didn't even like being in small group settings. But she overcame that, and she became a very talkative and social person. However, she still refuses to get over her fear of public speaking. She doesn't want to make that effort. And that's just how some people are. And that's the way it is. So, I hope this was acceptable. Perhaps if it wasn't, I could redo it. So, yeah, not a very good conclusion, but I think it's acceptable during these times, these crazy times we're living in right now. I am Andrew Romine. It's been a pleasure being at FC, and yeah, this was my last semester. This was my last semester here, and I'll be graduating. So, yeah, that's it.